Hello, and welcome to Entangled, a podcast where we explore the science of consciousness, the true nature of reality, and what it means to be a spiritual being having a human experience. Today I'm joined by Jennifer Spor, spiritual advisor, channel, and host of Path of the Awakened Heart podcast. In this conversation, Jennifer describes how she rediscovered herself, transitioning from a successful career in retail to her calling as a spiritual advisor. Jennifer explains how we are souls, eternal students, and that our purpose is to evolve. Jennifer and I discuss the idea that souls choose experiences in this manifestation as we consider ideas of fate versus destiny. Jennifer describes the Akashic records as the portal to a healing journey in our soul's library. Jennifer explains how the misuse of free will creates our opportunities for learning and the need for us to interrupt old patterns. Jennifer explains how the records, the book of life, reflect the collective consciousness and reside in a realm of higher frequency based in truth and love. Next, we discuss how Jennifer developed her channeling skills through meditation. We consider the apocalypse as an ending to a cycle, and that as we enter the age of Aquarius, the rise in collective consciousness will restore the balance of the divine feminine and the sacred masculine. Jennifer explains her deeper call to truth in that we are all walking the path of ascension. We then discuss ideas of surrender versus control, of spiritual alchemy, and of balance. We end the discussion with tips on how to face your fears and reset the body to neutral. This outro is titled The Path of Ascension and the Tree of the Sephiroth. Outros are available for this and all episodes at entangledpodcast.substack.com. Music from the show is available on the Spotify playlist Entangled, The Vibes. If you like the show, please drop a 5-star review and subscribe on Substack, Spotify, Apple, or wherever you listen to podcasts. Please enjoy the episode. Jennifer Spor, welcome to the Entangled podcast.
Thank you for having me. I'm excited to be here and to have this chat today.
Awesome. I'm excited to have you as well. Jennifer is a spiritual advisor, channel, and Akashic Records trauma counselor, and also a podcast host. So I think quite a bit for us to talk about today.
Yes. A wide range of topics we can cover under those umbrellas for sure.
Yeah. So maybe to start with, how did you grow up? How did you lead a life that led to that long list of accomplished and diverse titles I just ran off?
Yeah, that's a really big question. So, I was saying earlier before we hit record that I believe we go through a lot of evolutions on our journey, right? Like many different versions and iterations of ourselves. And I believe actually that all of those experiences serve a higher purpose, right? In shaping who we become. A lot of that are actual life experiences, which are then, crystallized into wisdom, right? So what led to that? Wow. In a nutshell, really to say that I've always been someone who's been highly motivated and driven, and also no matter where I've been in my life and on my path, I've always had to do something or pursue things that I believe in, right? There has always had to be a sense of conviction. And that's really, what led me here to this now moment. Like I was saying, I'm always someone who's been driven and motivated. I was on my own at a young age, around 16. And so I've always had a really strong work ethic. One thing that I have known my whole life, even when I was a little girl, I used to daydream, how we do when we're children, about being a teacher because I enjoyed helping people so much, right? And I always thought that I would go the traditional route in academia of being like a school teacher for younger kids, and being out on my own at such a young age without any kind of additional financial backing or parental support. I found myself around the age of 19 having that conversation about, wow, what path do I really want to pursue? And at the time I had just started working at a retail job, and I actually really liked it. And so I decided at the time that I would pursue that, and I did. And what ended up happening is I made an extremely successful career. By the time I was managing stores at 22, and by the time I was 31, I was an executive operations director at what used to be a $12 billion company. So, one of the few females, one of the youngest people to be promoted there. And so, like so many of us are taught to believe, I reached a space in my life where I checked off all of those boxes. And so it was in my pursuit of checking off all of those boxes that I ran out of boxes to check off, right? It's like, what is there to learn now? Like what's next? So that's really what led me to feeling into what was next. Also I've always been, I've always had spiritual gifts. I've always been highly intuitive and energetically sensitive. And that time in my life also led to me embarking on this journey of just rediscovering myself, because what I realized as well is that a lot of the way that I was living my life back then wasn't really for me. I was on in my job all the time. And when I wasn't working, I was spending time doing a lot of things that my friends and family wanted to do. So in a lot of ways, I was meeting myself, for the first time in so many years. And so I embarked on that journey. Several key life events happened that ended up contributing, which I told you about with my mom becoming ill and all of that contributed to me making a decision that I reached a point where I wanted to be closer to my family. And so I stepped down from my career and moved. And it was really after I moved and I was going through that journey of having this tremendous, spiritual awakening, essentially like a resurrection of, who Jennifer is, that I realized that I was really being called to support other people who were waking up essentially and seeking deeper, more authentic meaning to the way that they're living their life and really living expressed in their truth and fulfilling their purpose and mission here. And to say that, purpose and mission, you can hear that, right? And think, well, I'm not meant to be on a world stage or anything. And that's not what it's really about. It's really about that all of us are here for a reason. I believe that. And whatever that is for you, and it also brings you joy, that's what you're here to do. And that's who you're here to be. And it was my own journey of realizing that and beginning to embody that inspired me to support other people in that way as well. And since I've taken that step, because I've had my business for several years now and I'm on my second podcast, there are iterations of that, right? Because I believe that we're eternal students. We're constantly evolving and we're meant to revisit our values and revisit what feels important to us over time. So that's the Cliff Notes version.
That's awesome. I love that idea of eternal students. What do you mean by that?
Yeah, just that one of the reasons I believe that we're here, right? A soul in here having this human experience is to learn. It's evolution. It's to evolve. And traditional society, has conditioned many of us to believe that change is something to be feared. But I believe the truth is that it's actually the opposite, at a soul level. Like, we're wired for expansion. That's who we are. We're powerful, creative beings. And so being able to live life in a way where you can approach it with that expansiveness, with that curiosity, I believe that's part of who we are.
Yeah. And what about the eternality of that piece? I mean, what do you think that indicates for who we are?
What does eternal mean to me? That's a great question. I believe that, again, in this incarnation, this life that we're here, you and I are here having now, that there is always opportunity for us to learn more and expand more. And I also believe that beyond this, that our soul has many different experiences, many different incarnations, many different lifetimes, and in each one that we learn something, right? I also believe that at a soul level, we choose some of the experiences that we're going to have before we come here. So I speak about that a lot in the context of fate versus destiny. So fate being defined as the experiences, the circumstances that your soul has chosen to have before it comes here in this life. And then destiny being your free will in terms of how you consciously choose to respond to those circumstances, right? When faced with them, which are, I believe, in of the lessons that we are being presented with. So when I work with clients, I've experienced it on my personal ascension journey, but when I also work with clients, I've had many instances where clients are experiencing repeat patterns from other lifetimes that they've experienced, including this one. Because I do a lot of healing work as well, I work with people in their Akashic records, which are the soul's records. Essentially, it's like I refer to it as a library because it's an easy way to put into context for people who are familiar with the records about how limitless and expansive they are. And so we can experience, patterns over lifetimes that when we are able to bring awareness and light to those and heal them and shift them, then that changes the reality that we're creating here now as well.
Mm-hmm. Wow.
Lots to chew on there. I know.
Yeah.
It's like, how many different rabbit holes can we go down?
I love it. I love that idea of fate versus destiny. I want to ask you some more about that. And so, I love how you explained it. And it's kind of the way I think about it, back to that as above, so below, right? It's like our cells are dependent on the lifestyle choices that we as, the human mind and physiology chooses, right? So it's not like those individual cells are operating independently or dependently on us, right? It's interdependent. And I think that, reality works the same way, right? Where there's these higher driving forces of our reality, of our universe, of this manifest life. So those are impacting us. And that's kind of the fate element. But then you also have the destiny of, free will. How do you achieve that highest potential that fate is driving you towards? And that's your destiny.
Yes. Yeah. And yes, and it's through our free will. Our free will can influence all of that through how we choose to use it, right? Because we can certainly misuse it. And it's the misuse of free will that creates those invitations to learning, I call them, those patterns, right? It's like, if you've probably heard the saying before, and I don't remember, like whoever originally said it, but it's like, if you keep doing the same thing, then you're going to keep getting the same result. Like you need to interrupt the pattern.
Totally. Yep. Interrupt the pattern. So how have you found ways to interrupt those patterns?
Yeah. So one way, as I mentioned, is because sometimes if we're experiencing a pattern and we keep getting a result that we don't want, right? Sometimes it can be subconscious, because you can be someone who has done all the things, you've researched and Googled and done affirmations and done all of the things, and you're still experiencing the same result. That's a good indicator that what you're experiencing is at a subconscious level. So working with someone to open yourself up at that level to get clarity around what the root cause is really key to interrupting that pattern. And in my experience, I've trained in a lot of different healing modalities, light body, Reiki. I've worked with people for almost 30 years and then training in the Akashic records. And I'll say that, in my opinion, the Akashic records is one of the most direct paths. It's like straight shot to let's get to the root of what's causing this and shift it. Because beyond receiving information in your Akashic records, you can also experience healing in your Akashic records as well. So it's kind of like a one-stop shop, That being said, there are lots of other modalities that exist too, right? Like different therapeutic techniques and practices that work for people as well. I always advise people to really feel into what you're being drawn to, because each of our paths is unique, and what works for me may not work for you. So that being said, right, with me, it's accessing the Akashic records. And then, just as important, it's taking whatever healing and shift you experience and awareness, right, you have. It's then taking that beyond your records and integrating that into your physical reality. We're a soul in this human body, having this human experience. And the idea is it's like a dance of balancing those. So in order to really create a different reality for yourself, whatever it is that you desire, you have to take that awareness and apply it. And that involves, implementing various habits and behaviors that align to what you want to create.
Could you expand a bit on how you understand the Akashic records? It's a very profound concept. And I think, to folks who haven't maybe studied it as much, it just can sound like this kind of nebulous woo-woo type thing. And so I'd love to kind of hear some more on your thoughts about it.
Yeah. So I want to first say about that if you don't believe in having a soul, right, that's eternal and that experiences all of these different incarnations and lifetimes, then it's not going to matter what I share with you about the Akashic records, because you're not going to hook onto it. Do you get what I'm saying? So if that's you, then you don't want to listen to this.
That's a good
I'm just going to save you all the trouble. But if you believe, right, that you have a soul, right, that soul, your life force, expands beyond this current experience that you're having, then continue on. So the Akashic records are the records of your soul. So if someone who's listening is familiar with the Bible, they're also referred to as the book of life in the Bible. So it's literally every experience you've had, every emotion you've experienced, every lifetime you've experienced since the beginning of your soul's existence is in your Akashic records. And everybody has their own Akashic records, okay, that reside within the field of the Akasha, which is the collective consciousness, right? So everyone has their own records. Everyone can learn to access their own records. So I work with clients in their Akashic records. I also teach the Akashic records because I believe in supporting other people to become more empowered, right? To access the limitless potential that is them. I mean, so many of us, we have all this amazing potential, and so many people barely scratch the surface of that, in their entire life here. So that's why I love teaching them. So whether you want to receive guidance around something and making a big decision, if you want clarity in your purpose and mission here, if you want to heal from a traumatic experience, if you want to play in the quantum field, right, and step into the future version of yourself that already exists in another dimension, that has already manifested what you wish to create for your reality, you're empowered to do all of that and more in your Akashic records. So even that explanation doesn't really do them justice. So you really need to experience it firsthand. But another reason that I love working in the Akashic records, right, is that they reside in a higher frequency where there is no subjectivity, right? They exist in a frequency that is of truth and love.
Wow. How do you access the Akashic?
Yeah, so it's literally as simple as setting an intention to open your records. It's really all about the space that you're in when you do it. So you could go on YouTube right now and there would be probably a million different meditations that would guide you on a journey through accessing your Akashic records. All you literally have to do is just set an intention to open them. So it's really bringing yourself into a sacred space where you're feeling neutral, right? Neutral, or in even a higher frequency space of joy or something, right? And then saying a prayer, creating a prayer or invocation that's unique to you, to then set the intention and ask for your Akashic records to be open. Now, there are Akashic record keepers that exist in there, right? Sometimes when you open your Akashic records, guides will come forward, ascended masters, angels, various high frequency, light beings. Sometimes a higher frequency essence of loved ones may come through for you. Again, the experience for everyone is very unique. Another universal tip, advice that I will share is that this really applies to anything you choose to pursue for your life, but to say that the more open-minded you are and the more willing you are to embody humility, right? That is to be the student, then the more you're going to receive from that experience. So an example can be sometimes in our mind, in our human mind, we'll say, well, yeah, of course I want to quit this habit or stop dating this person or whatever it is. But then our body might be saying a different story. Our body might not be ready to release that. And so when there's resistance, that's going to be reflected back to you.
Yeah. Got it. Interesting. And what would be some examples of intentions someone might want to set before exploring their Akashic records?
In terms of deciding what they want to focus on? Yeah, so there's a lot, right? Someone could be feeling unfulfilled in their career and want to tap into, well, what's my highest aligned path in terms of that next level expansion? What's next for me? So that would be an example of something, or I keep feeling triggered by this traumatic event that I experienced. How can I permanently heal myself and shift my energy to move on so that I'm no longer triggered by that? There are just tons of things. It's like, what is my highest aligned path in terms of where I'll be a year from now? There are endless questions that you can ask. I always advise people to ask open-ended questions, because if you ask yes or no questions, then you're likely going to get a yes or no answer, unless you are already a channel, which I am. So when I open the records, a lot of times they will just start giving me information, and all kinds of things will come through without me having to say anything. But you could ask about, the color of the sky, or like the one, or there are just so many things that you can ask about. But what a lot of people ask about, right, is what's my purpose? What's the next evolution of my purpose? What's my mission here? What's the highest aligned career for me? Where do I need to heal? A lot of people ask about relationships, managing familial relationships, wanting to find their divine life partner, right? A lot of people ask about relationships too, but nothing is off limits.
Yeah, that's really valuable. And how did you come to the recognition that you could channel and that you were a channel?
Yeah, I've been channeling for years. Even before I started studying the Akashic records, I was channeling for clients. So everyone has unique gifts. For me, the more, I will say, meditation, mindfulness meditation was a huge gateway. So creating that space to just be with myself and to be completely present in the moment is what I would say is the biggest catalyst to what started to open those abilities more and more. So I am relentless with my meditation practice. I do it 7 days a week. It doesn't matter where I'm at, what I have planned, or what's going on. That's always the top priority for me every morning. So really creating that space. And the more that I created that space, the more I began to really tune into what some of my gifts were. So I'd always known that I was an empath and that I was very sensitive to others' energies. But what started happening is I started experiencing an amplified version of that sensitivity, a heightened sensitivity to where I'd have more physical feelings, sensations, and then also claircognizance, which just means clear knowing. So I would have this information come in where I would just know what it is. And it wasn't fear-based. It just was very neutral. And these messages would come across in a way that I don't speak.
What do you mean by that? In a way you don't speak?
Right. So not everyone speaks the same way. So sometimes, for example, a lot of angels can sound more formal in the way that they talk, the wording that they use.
That's really cool. Can I tell you a recent experience that really resonated with of mine?
Yeah, I'd love to hear about it.
Awesome. Thanks. So, yeah, this was just a couple weeks ago, and I was thinking about just where humanity is at this point in our evolution, right? And I'd love to get your thoughts on this as well. It seems to me like we're at this kind of critical juncture point where, we're ascending, and, what exactly that means is kind of TBD. But so anyway, I was thinking about that, and I was thinking about it in relationship to what's going on in Ukraine, because I've been working on another episode on that topic. So anyway, I also decided to microdose that day as well. So just kind of walking around the lake, walking around Denver, thinking about all this. And then just like as I was winding down for the night, I was meditating, and I asked that question, right? What does all this mean for where humanity is at this point in our evolution? And an angel responded, I already told you that. And it's crazy because then it directed me to the Nag Hammadi scriptures. Are you familiar with these?
I've heard of them. I actually haven't read them.
Yeah. So I've been, kind of reading them on and off for about a year now. And I was guided to this book of the Secret Book of John, which is just kind of all about the apocalypse, but kind of, but not the fear-based apocalypse that we tend to think of it as, right? But more of like
it's more of an ending of a cycle. Mm-hmm.
Totally. Exactly. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I'm with you on that. I share the same perspective. A lot of the revelations in the, in some of the more traditional versions of the Bible talk about, I should say really that it's more about what man's interpretation of those scriptures have been, right? Because that's really what it is. It's like each one of us has our own version of what we believe the truth is. And the human part of us, that lens is influenced by our own experiences, right? So they can be subjective. So to say all that, my belief is that it's an ending of a cycle, and all of the events that are happening in the world are a result of someone's misuse of free will. We have free will. So, it doesn't matter how many opportunities are put in front of us. We're always going to be given the opportunity to choose. And we get to choose. Are we going to choose the higher path? Or are we going to choose to travel the same path, stuck on the hamster wheel of thinking we're going to get different results, right? But without getting into a hugely in-depth conversation about universal laws and all of that, but to say that everything is energy. And so the energy that you project through your free will decisions, through your behaviors, through all of that, right, is mirrored back to you. And so, like the corrupt governments, a lot of these ego-driven institutions and societal constructs are all a reflection on what has been the collective consciousness. And so what's happening, especially these last few years, there have always been people waking up, so to speak, right? But these last few years, there has been a mass awakening, a mass rise in consciousness on so many people's individual paths and as a collective as well. And my belief and opinion is, and we can already see it happening, it's a matter of time until there's a complete collapse of those structures. I'm feeling guided to share with you actually that I had a vision about 2 years ago that I remember just like it was yesterday. It's one of those things, it's I don't know if you've experienced this, but it's a vision. You don't have to journal about it or write it down. It's like a memory. It happens and then it's just etched in your being. But it was a time that I was seeing a certain location in the country. I was in this awakened community and I didn't see it, but there was a sense that all of the existing infrastructures of the government and school systems and all of these things had collapsed and gone away, and that there was still leadership, right? But that it was a completely different approach to what we've experienced up to this point, to where people were actually being voted into leadership roles based upon their merit, not money or, lobbyists or any of the other corrupt things that are happening in the world, right? And in our universe, right, we live in duality. We live in this pendulum where it's things can only be a certain way for so long before they energetically have to swing back the other way. And that's what I believe is happening right now. We're literally swinging back the other way.
Yeah. It's crazy, and I totally agree with you. And then, you think about the transition points in the ages, it looks like we're at the end of the age of Aquarius, the end of the age of Pisces going into Aquarius, and we're at this kind of critical kind of inflection point where things are transitioning. Like if you look at, that last transition point was when Christ was alive and when Alexandria was in full bloom and the Eleusinian mysteries in Greece, right? So it's it seems like that these transition points, while they can be scary because they are in, I think by definition, because you're breaking the old structure, they're a time of maximum chaos, but they're also a time of maximum
evolution.
Evolution, exactly. That's a great way to put it.
Yeah, absolutely. And, when Christ was alive, there was a major awakening. Beyond that, right, there was still a mass concealment and burial of divine feminine energies, which in source creation, right, it's about balance. It's about the sacred masculine and the divine feminine. Mary Magdalene is a great example of that. For a long time, she was close with Christ when he was alive. That was her last incarnation here. She was just as informed pretty much and educated, right? But yet the way that she was portrayed and a lot of her teachings and gospels were buried. And we've been living heavily influenced on the patriarchal side of things, which has caused an imbalance. And that's where we're getting back into, again, the laws of the universe, right? And how everything is energy. There has to be a balance. And so I feel like a lot of that awareness is coming back forward. What's happening too is that a lot of people are remembering other lifetimes that they've lived. They're remembering other soul gifts that they have, right? that are just coming to them. And that's because I believe that, so I don't believe anything's random. Okay. I think you, me, every person that's here right now at this point in history is here for a reason. And that in many cases, the culmination of all of the soul lessons, everything that you've learned and experienced is being brought to light for you here now to contribute, right? At a collective level to raising the consciousness of the planet, to bringing us fully into that Aquarius age where we're bringing back a balanced, harmonious approach to living, not only embodied in our individual path, but also as a collective.
Yeah. When you had that, did you say premonition? Is that what you referred to it as?
Yeah, it was like a vision.
Yeah. What did you have an idea of the time frame
Yes.
to like when we get to that point?
Yes, it was like, it felt like it was about 5 years, 4 to 5 years. And that was a couple of years ago.
Yeah. That's interesting.
Yeah.
I've asked a few people that are pretty intuitive, and I think 2026, 2027 is what I hear a lot.
Yes. And in human design, a lot, experts in human design speak often of the 2027, there being a huge shift.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Pretty crazy.
It is. I mean, it's crazy. It's also amazing. That brings me back to what we were talking about earlier about how we have so much untapped potential. Mm-hmm. And that's why I love working with people in the records and teaching them how to access their records in an in-depth way, because it really does serve as an amazing tool to have to help you tap into that. And it's not even a modality. It's beyond that, right? Because it's just the Akashic records are an aspect of you. They're literally a part of you.
Mm-hmm. Wow. That's really cool.
Yeah, it is pretty cool.
I think one of the things that's scary for folks to kind of come to terms with the cooler, like more exciting parts of reality is that, you do have to confront the dark side of, the existing power structures. And, I'm curious if you had a dark night of the soul on your individual journey that's kind of, was a tough bridge for you, but, one you had to cross.
I've had several, actually. The most recent one I had was only a couple of years ago. I was already well established in my business. And what happened was, I know a lot of other people experienced this as well, but later in the year 2020, I had this, I had traumatic memories from my childhood. Okay. But the truth is, there was so much that I didn't remember. And that often happens with people who are traumatized. They repress, or leave their body for some of those experiences. But later in 2020, it was like this tsunami of memories came back that I didn't know were there at a conscious level. So there was a lot of major shifts that happened as a result of that threw me off my, I don't have to be throw me off my game for a little bit, because I've been on my spiritual path for a long time. So I didn't, quit my business and go crawl under a rock somewhere. But it did require a lot of spiritual discipline to create space every day, to give myself that space, to give my body that space, my mind and my heart that space to process what I was remembering, so that I could release those energies. Because if we don't allow ourselves space to do that, those energies become stored and then manifest themselves into disease or a lot of other different ways, which could be a whole other conversation episode, right? To talk about medical intuition and how our distortions manifest themselves. But there was that, which then also led to how I was still living my life. And what I mean by that is, what I was feeling was a deeper call to truth. I talk about this a lot when I have my events where I'm teaching the records, because I teach people not just a traditional training of accessing your records, but how do you access your records and navigate them intentionally on your ascension journey, right? To live more deeply embodied in your truth. So a great example of that I realized was some of the things, even though I was of pure intent that I was seeking to accomplish, were being done within 3D constructs, right? Like business is a perfect example of that. You know, you have this greater purpose and mission that you're feeling guided to fulfill. Yet at the same time, you're allowing yourself to get sucked into, you know, oh, well, this is the right way to do the podcast. This is the right way to share a post on social media, right? So the next thing you know, this happens with so many people. Next thing you know, then you're getting more distracted essentially by that, whether you're doing something right or wrong versus just staying true and authentic to what your soul is guiding you to do. So I realized there were some areas of my life where I was still falling into that trap, right? And so I literally set an intention one day. I knew what I was calling forward when I did this, but I set an intention one day that I am intentionally navigating my ascension journey. I had known for quite some time before then that this lifetime for me is like tying up a bunch of loose ends, essentially, of things that have happened in other soul level experiences. So I made a declaration. This is the lifetime. I'm tying up the loose ends. And anything that is not in alignment with the truth of who I am, I want to bring it forward and release it. So after that, right, it's like, if you're familiar with tarot and the Tower card, my life literally felt like the Tower tarot card for probably about almost a year, because there were relationships and like these other things just coming forward because I was being called to live more deeply embodied in the integrity of who I am and the truth. And that was a dark night. Like if there were a dark night of the soul, that would have been it. It would have been very easy for me to go, I'm not showing up, I'm not sharing my wisdom anymore because I'm not doing anything. I want to crawl under a rock somewhere. And I even reached a point where I was like, what is the point of me being here? Like, what am I doing right now? Not from a mental health, like suicidal state, but more from a, like, what's going on? Like I'm still here and there's a reason for that. So all of that was happening and it was very challenging to move through that. And it taught me a lot. And it also felt amazing. So after almost a year, I literally woke up one day. I woke up one morning and the sun was shining through my bedroom window and I felt lighter. Like it was like the end of a storm where the clouds had cleared. And like that was it. And I physically felt lighter and amazing. And, sharing that story can scare people. It can deter people. But when you're someone where it really means a lot to you to live in integrity and in the truth of who you are, there's a willingness, right, to face the shadow side of yourself and what needs to be released so that you can live authentically and truly feel more joy, because that's something we haven't talked a lot about today either, is that being able to walk this earth plane with a light foot, to experience joy, to play, that's just as important as all of the other stuff that we've been talking about. Because the thing is that, spiritual ascension, that can be serious business, right? What's happening in the world, that's serious business. At the same time, when we're experiencing joy or we're in a state of play, we're in flow. And when we're in flow, we're free of resistance, which means that we're open to receive and we're open to create.
What do you think our experience of reality will be like post spiritual ascension? I think about that a lot.
Well, I think so that's a very interesting question, because I don't think there is a post spiritual ascension from a collective standpoint. So earlier I mentioned how each person's truth, what they believe their truth to be, is subjective, and it's influenced, right, by their human experience here in their current lifetime. And so there can be people who are ascended who are operating at a 5D or higher frequency, literally walking down the same sidewalk as someone who isn't. And the way that they view the world is going to look different than the way the other person does.
That makes sense.
Yeah.
It's interesting too, we were talking about, what I just kind of think of as evil, right? Just the mistake of free will. And it makes me think of the Sanskrit concept called pragya parad, I think is how you say it. And it is also known as like the mistake of the intellect. And that's kind of how they think of it. It's like your mind forgets about, it tricks yourself into forgetting how much deeper you truly are.
Yes.
And once you lose that connection, that's how you can be led down the
left-hand
path.
Because the human mind, although it serves a purpose, your human mind is isolated to this experience, this one grain of sand within the vast potential that is you, right? So operating from the mind only is a very kind of tunnel vision sort of way of lens of looking at life, where when you're tapping into your soul's guidance, you're tapping into the wholeness and the expansiveness of who you are and the true gifts and knowledge that you already have.
Yeah. Have you always been able to view reality that way? Have you ever gotten trapped in that kind of intellect only?
Oh, I've definitely gotten trapped in that, because it's a journey. This path of ascension, this path of evolution, when you choose it, it's an everyday series of choices, right? It's not about perfection. It's about understanding your relationship to everything and being conscious in making those series of choices. I still fall into that trap of intellect with certain things every so often. And it mostly happens when I'm not creating space to be, right? Because our human mind is reptilian. So, it's major purpose, right? It's like to keep us safe and all of those kind of things. And so that's really when it happens. And then also understanding that there is very heavy societal and ancestral programming, right? We're literally, this is like, it just blows my mind at how the inversion that exists out there, right? For example, very simple examples. We're taught to fear change. It's literally the opposite that is true. We are wired for expansion. Our souls are evolution and expansion, right? Another example is surrender. If you look in the dictionary at the definition of surrender, it literally implies defeat, where the divine truth of surrender is really about alignment to the truth of who you are. And so when you're taught your whole life that you should fear change and that surrender implies defeat, well, then how hard is it going to be to live your highest aligned path, right? If you're constantly fighting this conditioning that is telling you otherwise?
Wow. Yeah, and it makes me think of the obsession we have today in society with control, right? Controlling every aspect of your life, the future, and you get so caught up in, creating that reality that you miss those higher powers of fate and where they're directing you to.
Yes. Control is the biggest illusion of all. None of us have control. All that happens with our free will is that we either choose to use it for our highest good and the highest good of all, or we choose to misuse it. But what happens is the misuse of free will ends up being a detour. And when we misuse our free will, we create this like series of detours. But I believe we eventually, it just takes us longer if we continue misusing it, right? But we eventually end up back in the same space. But yeah, control is a complete illusion. And also control fosters resistance. And when you're in resistance, you're literally repelling the very thing or whatever it is that you want to call in. I mean, if I could say just one piece of advice to everyone in the world, it would be focus on letting go of resistance. Focus on letting go of resistance in every aspect of your being and watch how quickly things alchemize for you.
That's an awesome word, alchemize.
Yeah, because it's magic. It's really, when you're in flow, it's magic.
And I was just actually listening to your podcast about alchemization. So let's talk about that. Like, what does that mean to you?
Yeah, I mean, alchemizing it, I mean, it is magic. It's divine creatorship. It's, it's interesting because it's beyond manifesting, right? Alchemy is creating your reality in the embodiment of the now, right? Every day on a day-to-day basis from a state of being, living in the truth of who you are. When we do that, then creating whatever we're calling in comes to us so much more effortlessly. And alchemy is, and within that, right, it's like, it's letting go of resistance. It's balance. It's honoring that balance. And it's living embodied in that perspective.
Balance is something I really struggle with. My personality is like, I can be pretty intense. So like I'll focus on one thing really intently and I don't always keep up with other aspects of my life, right? And keep that balance. So I'm curious, do you find that to be a common issue for folks? And, do you have any strategies for helping to establish that balance?
Yeah, I mean, that's absolutely a challenge. I mean, we live in a society that is hugely imbalanced, grossly imbalanced. We've lived in a patriarchal society for quite a while now. My advice for others to achieve more balance in their lives is to, if you're really interested in doing this, right? It's like, I always like to use this wheel concept. So it's like, create this wheel and then you have like one section that's finances, right? Because that's the world we live in, money. You have another section that's relationships, another section that's yourself, your well-being, your spiritual path, another section that's your body, another section that's your business and career, right? And then assess on a scale of 1 to 10, being honest with yourself, how balanced are you in each one of those areas, with 10 being the most balanced. That gives you an easy visual of like, where is the wheel flatter, so to speak. Like that helps you to look at where are the areas that you need to prioritize focusing on first. And so that's the high level, and then drilling down, because there's very much a practical element of planning with this too, right? It's like looking at how you're scheduling your time. So you have this vision for what you want to manifest. Well, how is that support? How you're showing up supporting your vision? So if you want to show up in this way, but your schedule doesn't reflect that, or in how you choose to spend your time doesn't reflect that, then looking at, very simply what needs to change there. These are all very simple concepts, right? And I want to say that understand that the most simple concepts are the most profound ones. Okay? Because in all the spiritual work that I do and all of the energetic work that I do with clients, right? There's also a very practical aspect of work that I do with them. I work with my private clients in creating a roadmap with them that aligns to the vision that they want to manifest in every aspect and in every way. And then when you have that plan, it becomes your choice to follow that plan or not. And what gets in the way of many people's ability to be disciplined, right, is our sabotaging beliefs. Like sometimes there are even subconscious level beliefs about I'm not worthy, or I don't deserve success, or, you know, a lot of people who have experienced trauma fear success because they fear of having attention directed
Wow, that's
at
interesting.
them, right?
Yeah.
So there are a lot of subconscious beliefs that we can have that will sabotage us from executing the clearest plan, you know, for our life. And so whenever you recognize that you're struggling in an area, it's always valuable to reach out for support from someone who can relate to what you're experiencing and also provide you objective counsel.
Yeah. Fear is a bitch for sure.
It is. It manifests itself in a lot of ways.
It does. And in so many ways, like that you just don't even realize.
Yeah. But I mean, very simply, that's the process. You want to call something in, that's all you have to do. And a lot of the journey really is more about shifting those energies in your body systems, you know, to upgrade your system, you know, like a lot of people struggle with their nervous system as well.
Yeah, I mean, for me, starting meditating and chiropractic and stopping drinking, like the combination of those three things have been some of the best, you know, life changes I've made. How do you deal with fear when you find it rising up?
That's a great question. This is something that I teach clients as well. And I think I actually have a video on this on YouTube that everybody's welcome to. I have a protocol for that. So every time I feel something, whether it's fear, whatever, any lower frequency, okay, as soon as I notice it, I stop what I'm doing immediately. And if I can't stop what I'm engaged in immediately, then I stop as soon as I can, right? I acknowledge how I'm feeling. I'm honest with myself about how I'm feeling. I'm honest with myself about why I'm feeling what I feel. And as I'm doing this, I'm stepping into an observer role and I'm setting the intention to tune into my soul's guidance, okay? Not my human mind. So I'm asking my soul, how do I feel? Why do I feel this way? What is the root cause of why I'm feeling this way? And then I trust what comes forward. And then I set an intention to shift it. And as I'm setting an intention to shift it, I do breath work at the same time to breathe in and out deeply, ensuring I'm feeling that oxygen throughout all the cells in my body. And I keep breathing in and out until I feel zero resistance in my body, until I feel neutral. And then I move on.
Wow. How long does it usually take for you to get to neutral?
Only a few minutes. It doesn't take that long. Yeah. So I put a lot of emphasis around this technique because I mentioned this, you know, earlier in a different context of our conversation, but to say that when we don't move the energy, when we don't acknowledge our feelings and process them and release them, then they stay stored in our body and they manifest themselves with health issues or in any other number of ways if we don't constantly recycle, circulate what we're experiencing. And that's a technique that you can use anywhere, right? You can go sit in your car for a couple of minutes and process through, whatever it is that you're experiencing. It's the things that we haven't, right, in past lives, if we've not healed from something. There is also a lot of ancestral healing happening right now in the planet too, right? We can actually, up to, some people say 7 generations back. I believe it's further than that. And in working with clients, I've seen much further than 7 generations back. We can actually be storing that unhealed ancestral stuff in our DNA strands. So important to clear whatever we're aware of.
Yeah, that's interesting. And it brings me back to something you said earlier, that you felt that this life was about tying up loose ends. So I would love to know, like, have you figured out what those loose ends are?
You know what? If I were ascended, let's say, like ascended, I wouldn't be here. I believe that if there was nothing else for me to learn in this current experience, then I wouldn't be here. So there are still more loose ends to tie up, right? And when I talk about loose ends, that can be trauma, that can be karma, it can be fulfilling a purpose and mission, something that I'm meant to do, right? Because even if we're being called to something, we can still use our free will to not choose it from a place of fear. So basically, my outlook on life is that whatever comes into my awareness, I'm saying yes to it. I'm saying yes to it. Even if it scares me, I'm saying yes to every opportunity. I'm saying yes to any shadow work or healing that comes up. Mm-hmm. I'm just saying yes to all of it.
I love it. Yeah. That's awesome. So you talked about do you currently run 2 podcasts, or you have run 2 podcasts?
Yeah. So I currently run 1 podcast. I had another podcast before. So my current podcast is Path of the Awakened Heart. I launched that last year. I had another podcast before that, Awaken on Purpose, which on paper was a very successful podcast. What happened, and I had that for 3 years. What happened over time is that it wasn't feeling as aligned energetically. Like, it wasn't feeling as deep as I wanted to go, because I was evolving on my path. And so I tried relaunching it a couple of times and changing up, subject matter and guests I was having on the show. And none of it, like, really it just wasn't feeling aligned. So I finally made the decision in September of 2022. I let it go for good. And then I took a bit of a break with podcasting, and then Path of the Awakened Heart came. And with these kind of endeavors, I get divine downloads for what I'm being guided to do, right? So when Awaken on Purpose happened, I literally got the name Awaken on Purpose. When Path of the Awakened Heart came, I literally got the name Path of the Awakened Heart, because Path of the Awakened Heart, and you might have read the brief explanation of the show, right? It's really about living with an awakened heart. It's about alchemy of the heart, right? Living from the heart. So it was going even deeper and more expansive than I had gone before. So that's my story around launching the second podcast.
Wow. So tell us, what's the journey been like for the last year with the Path of the Awakened Heart podcast?
Yeah, it's been great. I don't publish as many episodes as frequently as I used to, because the spaciousness of that feels good. Guests have all been amazing, and it's all felt really aligned, because that's where I'm currently at on my journey, right? So that's really what it's about. It's just following on a day-to-day basis what you're being guided to, honoring that, and then when it's time to move on, honoring that as well. I will say, letting go of the other podcast, it was a lot like ending a long-term relationship. Anybody, and I know you know this, right? It's like anybody who has a podcast, it's very much a labor of love. Yeah, so there was a mourning period. There was a mourning period when I let go. I felt sad about it, but honored, that feeling, and it served its purpose. It helped a lot of people. I still have people message me every so often. They'll say, "Oh, didn't you used to host, Awaken on Purpose?" Or so it's still reaching people in some way, which is great.
Yeah. That's awesome. That's awesome. What do you think? How have you changed as a podcaster?
Gosh, how have I changed? Have I changed as a podcaster? I would say, as this would go for myself and probably a lot of other people, right? Even outside of having a podcast, as time goes on, we get more and more clear on who we are, how we want to show up, and what we allow, right, into our field. So I would say with this show and changing as a podcaster, I would say my guests and like the content matter is even more, deeply aligned. And like earlier, we talked also about falling into that trap of trying to facilitate higher frequency teachings and lower frequency 3D constructs. So over time as a podcaster as well, I have become so much even more expansive and free in my expression because I don't give a what about what's right, what's wrong.
Yeah. And how do you think podcasting has changed you?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's done nothing but contribute to my expansion. I mean, I've made so many great connections through podcasting, clients.
It's really cool.
Yeah, it's been really collaborative. Yeah, it's been just great in so many ways.
Yeah, it's a really cool way to like just get to meet people and get access to people you wouldn't necessarily have otherwise.
Yeah.
For sure. Yeah.
Yes.
And it's interesting you talk about like wanting to produce more. And I'm the same way. It's like, because I end each one with like a little essay and like some of those end up being just super long. And so like the production time, like I always feel like I'm catching up. But at the end of the day, like you said, it's a labor of love and, it's so fun too.
Yeah, it is. Yeah.
Yeah. Awesome. Well, Jennifer, this has been such a fun conversation. If folks want to find out more about you, where can they go to learn more?
Yeah, I think the best place to go is my website, which is jenniferspor.com. So for those who aren't looking at show notes and who are listening, it's really easy. It's just JENIFERSPOR. And on my website, there are ways that you can work with me. There are tons of free resources, free meditations, activations, blogs. You can access my podcast through there as well. So all things Jennifer, that website.
Amazing. Well, Jennifer, thanks again. I had a blast and we'll be in touch.
Thanks. Me too. Thanks so much for having me.
Thank you all for listening, and I hope you enjoyed the episode. In this conversation, Jennifer and I discussed what we believe to be the next phase of human evolution, the path of ascension, the realization of heaven here on earth. When we study the esoteric wisdom of our religious traditions, we discover the techniques for ascension encoded within all of them. Mysticism is another word for ascension, known as becoming one with God, one with the Absolute. The path of ascension is encoded within the secrets of Jewish mysticism, known as Kabbalah. As Manly P. Hall describes in The Secret Teachings of All Ages, quote, Hebrew theology was divided into three distinct parts. The first was the law, the second was the soul of the law, and the third was the soul of the law. The law was taught to all the children of Israel. The Mishma, or the soul of the law, was revealed to the rabbins and teachers, but the Kabbalah, the soul of the law, was cunningly conceived, and only the highest initiates among the Jews were instructed in its secret principles. According to certain Jewish mystics, Moses ascended Mount Sinai 3 times, remaining in the presence of God 40 days each time. During the first 40 days, the tables of the written law were delivered to the prophet. During the second 40 days, he received the soul of the law, And during the last 40 days, God instructed him in the mysteries of the Kabbalah, the soul of the law. Moses concealed in his first 4 books of the Pentateuch the secret instructions which God had given him, and for centuries, students of Kabbalism have sought therein the secret doctrine of Israel. As the spiritual nature of man is concealed in his physical body, so the unwritten law, the Mishma and the Kabbalah, is concealed within the written teachings of the Mosaic Code. Kabbalah means the secret or hidden tradition, the unwritten law, and according to an early rabbi, it was delivered to man in order that, through the aid of its abstruse principles, he might learn to understand the mystery of both the universe about him and the universe within him. The origin of Kabbalism is a legitimate subject for controversy. Early initiates of the Kabbalistic mysteries believed that its principles were first taught by God to a school of his angels before the fall of man. The angels later communicated the secrets to Adam so that through the knowledge gained from an understanding of its principles, fallen humanity might regain its lost estate. The angel Raziel was dispatched from heaven to instruct Adam in the mysteries of the Kabbalah. Different angels were employed to initiate the succeeding patriarchs in this difficult science. Tophiel was the teacher of Shem, Raphael of Isaac, Metatron of Moses, and Michael of David. Christian D. Ginsburg has written, "From Adam it passed over to Noah, and then to Abraham, the friend of God, who emigrated with it to Egypt, where the patriarch allowed a portion of the mysterious doctrine to ooze out. It was in this way that the Egyptians obtained some knowledge of it, and other Eastern nations could introduce it into their philosophical systems. Moses, who was learned in all the wisdom of Egypt, was first initiated into it in the land of his birth, but became more proficient in it during his wanderings in the wilderness, where he not only devoted to it the leisure hours of the whole 40 years, but also received lessons in it from one of the angels. Moses also initiated the 70 elders into the secrets of this doctrine, and they again transmitted them from hand to hand. Of all who formed the unbroken line of tradition, David and Solomon were the most initiated into Kabbalah." End quote. In the essential Kabbalah, the heart of Jewish mysticism, Daniel C. Matt explains, quote, "The Hebrew word Kabbalah means receiving, or that which has been received. On the one hand, Kabbalah refers to tradition, ancient wisdom received and treasured from the past. On the other hand, if one is truly receptive, wisdom appears spontaneously, unprecedented, taking you by surprise. The Jewish mystical tradition combines both of these elements. Its vocabulary teems with what the Zohar, the canonical text of the Kabbalah, calls new ancient words. Many of its formulations derive from traditional sources, the Bible and rabbinic literature, but with a twist. For example, the world that is coming, a traditional phrase often understood as referring to a far-off messianic era, turns into the world that is constantly coming, constantly flowing, a timeless dimension of reality available right here and now if one is receptive. The rabbinic concept of Shekinah, divine immanence, blossoms into the feminine half of God, balancing the patriarchal conception that dominates the Bible and the Talmud. Kabbalah retains the traditional discipline of Torah and mitzvot, commandments, but now the mitzvot have cosmic impact. The secret of fulfilling the mitzvot is the mending of all the worlds and drawing forth the emanation from above. According to Kabbalah, every human action here on earth affects the divine realm, either promoting or hindering the union of Shekinah and her partner, the Holy One. Blessed be He. God is not static being, but by dynamic becoming. Without human participation, God remains incomplete, unrealized. It is up to us to actualize the divine potential in this world. God needs us." End quote. Today, Kabbalah can often carry a negative connotation. It's no coincidence that the word cabal, a small group of people who plan secretly to take action, especially political action, derives from it. The reality confronting humanity today is that the forces of organized crime have, for millennia, monopolized the occult wisdom of the Kabbalah for their own power and control. However, this should not scare us from understanding the secrets of mysticism. Rather, we should recognize that what can be used for black sorcery can also be used for divine magic. These are two sides of the same coin. The knowledge of Kabbalah was organized into a graphical representation by Jewish mystics, a key known as the Tree of the Sephiroth. Here's Manly P. Hall again. Quote, "The Tree of the Sephiroth may be considered an invaluable compendium of the secret philosophy which originally was the spirit and soul of Hasidic Judaism. The Kabbalah is the priceless heritage of Israel, but each year those who comprehend its true principles become fewer in number. The Jew of today, if he lacks a realization of the profundity of his people's doctrines, is usually permeated with the most dangerous form of ignorance, modernism, and is prone to regard the Kabbalah either as an evil to be shunned like the plague, or as a ridiculous superstition which has survived the black magic of the Dark Ages. Yet without the key which the Kabbalah supplies, the spiritual mysteries of both the Old and New Testament must remain unsolved by the Jew and Gentile alike. The Sephirothic tree consists of 10 globes of luminous splendor arranged in 3 vertical columns and connected by 22 channels or paths. The 10 globes are called the Sephiroth, and to them assigned the numbers 1 to 10. The 3 columns are called mercy on the right, severity on the left, and between them, mildness as the reconciling power. The columns may also be said to represent wisdom, strength, and beauty, which form the triune support of the universe, for it is written that the foundation of all things is the 3. The 22 channels are the letters of the Hebrew alphabet, and to them are assigned the major trumps of the tarot deck of symbolic cards. Eliphas Levi declared that by arranging the tarot cards according to a definite order, man could discover all that is knowable concerning his God, his universe, and himself. When the 10 numbers which pertain to the globes, Sephiroth, are combined with the 22 letters relating to the channels, the resultant sum is 32, the number peculiar to the Kabbalistic path of wisdom. These paths, occasionally referred to as the 32 teeth in the mouth of the vast countenance, or as the 32 nerves that branch out from the divine brain, are analogous to the first 32 degrees of Freemasonry, which elevate the candidate to the dignity of a prince of the royal secret. Kabbalists also consider it extremely significant that in the original Hebrew scripture the name of God should occur 32 times in the first chapter of Genesis. In the English translations of the Bible, the name appears 33 times. In the mystic analysis of the human body, according to the rabbins, 32 spinal segments lead upward to the temple of wisdom, the skull. 4 Kabbalistic trees were combined by later Jewish scholars into one all-inclusive diagram and termed by them not only the Sephirothic but also the archetypal or heavenly Adam. According to some authorities, it is this heavenly Adam and not a terrestrial man whose creation is described in the opening chapters of Genesis. Out of the substances of this divine man the universe was formed. In him it remains and will continue even after dissolution shall resolve the spheres back into their own primitive substance. The deity is never conceived of as actually contained in the Sephiroth, which are purely hypothetical vessels employed to define the limits of the creative essence. Adolf Frank rather likens the Sephiroth to varicolored transparent glass bowls filled with pure light, which apparently assumes the color of its containers but whose essential nature remains ever unchanged and unchangeable. The 10 Sephiroth composing the body of the prototypic Adam, the numbers related to them, and the parts of the universe to which they correspond are as follows. The first Sephiroth, the Keter, or the crown, corresponds in the universe to the primum mobile. Number 2, the Hakma, or wisdom, corresponds to the zodiac. Number 3, the Binah, or understanding, corresponds to Saturn. Number 4, Hesed, or mercy, corresponds to Jupiter. Number 5, Gevura, or severity, corresponds to Mars. Number 6, Tiferet, or beauty, corresponds to the Sun. Number 7, Netzah, or victory, corresponds to Venus. Number 8, Had, or glory, corresponds to Mercury. Number 9, Yesod, or the foundation, corresponds to the Moon. And number 10, Malkut, the kingdom, corresponds to the elements. It must continually be emphasized that the Sephiroth and the properties assigned to them, like the Tetractys of the Pythagoreans, are merely symbols of the cosmic system with its multitude of parts. The truer and fuller meaning of these emblems may not be revealed by writing or by word of mouth, but must be divined as the result of study and meditation. In the Sefer HaZohar, it is written that there is a garment, the written doctrine which every man may see. Those with understanding do not look upon the garment, but at the body beneath it, the intellectual and philosophical code. The wisest of all, however, the servants of the heavenly kingdom, look at nothing save the soul, the spiritual doctrine, which is eternal and ever-springing root of law. Of this great truth, Eliphas Levi also writes, declaring that none can gain entrance to the secret house of wisdom unless he wear the voluminous cape of Apollonius of Tyana and carry in his hand the lamp of Hermes. The cape signifies the qualities of self-possession and self-reliance, which must envelop the seeker as a cloak of strength, while the ever-burning lamp of the sage represents the illuminated mind and perfectly balanced intellect, without which the mystery of the ages can never be solved. The Sephirothic tree is sometimes depicted as a human body, thus more definitely establishing the true identity of the first or heavenly man, Adam Kadmon, the idea of the universe. The 10 divine globes, Sephiroth, are then considered as analogous to the 10 sacred members and organs of the protogonos, according to the following arrangement. Keter is the crown of the prototypic head, and perhaps refers to the pineal gland. Chokmah and Binah are the right and left hemispheres, respectively, of the great brain. Hesed and Geburah, or Pachad, are the right and left arms, respectively, signifying the active creative members of the grand man. Tifereth is the heart, or, according to some, the entire viscera. Netzah and Had are the right and left legs, respectively, or the supporters of the world. Jasad is the generative system, or the foundation of form. And Malkuth represents the 2 feet, or the base of being. Occasionally, Jasad is considered as the male and Malkuth as the female generative power. The grand man thus conceived is the gigantic image of Nebuchadnezzar's dream, with head of gold, arms and chest of silver, body of brass, legs of iron, and feet of clay. The medieval Kabbalists also assigned one of the 10 commandments and a 10th part of the Lord's Prayer in sequential order to each of the 10 Sephiroth. End quote. As Jennifer and I discussed, the apocalypse is not an eschatological end to humanity. Rather, it represents a transition point in the ages. During our last transition from the age of Aries to the age of Pisces, Jesus of Nazareth was born. He revitalized the knowledge of Kabbalah, and in doing so, became the ascendant master, Jesus Christ. Again, the forces of corruption distorted his message to divide rather than to unite, to say we must accept him as our one true Lord and Savior, or reject him as simply man or myth, and to foment war after war between these groups. In the process, we have lost the essence of Christ's message. As he said so eloquently, the kingdom of God is within you. As humanity is made in the image of God, so too do we all have the latent potential for ascension here on earth, today, in the eternal present now. Humanity today finds itself at another apocalypse, a transition from the end of the age of Pisces and the dawning of the age of Aquarius, an unveiling of that which has been hidden. In this next phase of human civilization, it's not enough to know. It's time for us to know how. Students of Christian mysticism suggest that the Beatitudes, delivered during Christ's Sermon on the Mount, represent more than just divinely inspired wisdom, that they also represent an alchemical formula, and that by speaking these verses, we catalyze the potential for ascension encoded within our DNA. I've incorporated this recitation into my morning meditation practice and would like to end this episode doing so again. If you're inclined to join me, please grab your closest Bible or web browser and turn to the Gospel of Matthew, chapter 5, verses 3 through 12. Blessed are the poor in spirit, for theirs is the kingdom of heaven. Blessed are those who mourn, for they will be comforted. Blessed are the meek, for they will inherit the land. Blessed are they who hunger and thirst for righteousness, for they will be satisfied. Blessed are the merciful, for they will be shown mercy. Blessed are the clean of heart, for they will see God. Blessed are the peacemakers, for they will be called children of God. Blessed are they who have been persecuted for the sake of righteousness, for theirs is the kingdom of heaven. Blessed are you when they insult you and persecute you and utter every kind of evil against you falsely because of me. Rejoice and be glad, for your reward will be great in heaven. Thus they persecuted the prophets who were before you.
Could I believe in what my eyes cannot see? Or has the antidote to brokenness evaded me? Could I believe in what my ears have not heard? Or will the suffering that surrounds me have the final word? Even on the darkest nights, I know the sun will rise. I will trust the promise I cannot see with my eyes. Even when the clouds surround, I know the sun still shines. But when will it break through? Jesus, I need you. Touched, or will the weight of disappointment apprehend my trust? Can I believe in what my mind cannot know? Or could the number of the stars contain my fragile hopes? Even on the darkest nights, I know the sun will rise. Trust the promise I cannot see with my eyes. Even when the clouds surround, I know the sun still shines. But when will it break through? Jesus, I need you. When will it break through? Jesus, I need you. When will it break through? Jesus, I need you. I need you. I'll believe in what my eyes can't see, and I will trust you, Lord. I will trust you, Lord. I will make a sacrifice of praise and say that